Today we're going to talk about communication noise. As I mentioned in my video about the model of communication, there are 4 different types of communication noise. Today I'm going to talk about physical noise and semantic noise. Physical noise is noise in our environments, and it can be anything from, example, my cat right now. Oh, there he is, who's rubbing against my leg. That is a form of physical noise. Somebody honking or yelling in the street is going to be a form of physical noise too. Televisions, radios, iPods, notifications on our phones and our watches. These are huge amount of noise. If you watch any of the major news channels, for example, you'll often see tickers on the bottom or on the side talking about different news stories or what the weather is going to be or whether or not we are in an alert for the coronavirus or a terrorist attack or whatever. But all of that information on the screen, on the sides, on the bottom, that's a form of noise because it's distracting us from the main thing that we are trying to view, which might be the newscaster giving a news story. But noise can be a lot of other things as well. For example, if you have a messy environment, you haven't put things away, that can create a lot of noise. And we often think that we're filtering out all these noises. I can ignore this, I don't have to see this. My cat on my leg, it doesn't bother me, I'm filtering it out. But the truth is, we don't. We take in absolutely everything. We notice some things more than we notice other things, but that doesn't mean that we aren't being impacted by it. One of the biggest forms of noises, and actually this noise deals with psychological noise, physiological noise, semantic noise, and physical noise, and that is advertisements. We are bombarded with advertisements everywhere we go. And again, we think we filter this stuff out, but we really, really don't. We can't. Matter of fact, our brains does not multitask like that. There's been many studies, and I'll have some up at the classroom for you, but there are many studies that demonstrate that we cannot really multitask. What we do is laser focus really quickly on this task and then that task and then go over here. But when we're living in environments filled with physical noises, it's really difficult to multitask. So when you're looking at an article on the internet and there's a lot of hyperlinks in that article and you go, I wonder what that's about. And you click it and that takes you to another page and you start looking at that page. You go, that's interesting. And you go back to the original article and then you go, well, what about this link? And then that link takes you to another link, which takes you to another link. And all of a sudden you're in the middle of a time sink on the internet because of physical noise. It's interesting, but there has been no time in history, no time in the history of mankind where noise hasn't been at its height, at its peak, and that's right now. We are constantly bombarded by noise. So what is difficult for us as communicators is to really be able to filter out that noise when we are listening. Remember, most miscommunication happens on the receiver side, not necessarily the sender side. So when we're receiving information, we are dealing with a lot of noise to be able to sort through before we can get to the key of the communication and to make meaning out of that moment. So physical noise is all around us, and it's very, very difficult to escape, and so is semantic noise. Now, on the very base, semantic noise is a noise that we deal with when we don't understand language. It's not just about, though, somebody speaking a different language than you. It's not about my cat, say hello, Harpo, who speaks a different language than me. My cat and I constantly are trying to speak the same language, and we're failing. But it's also about things like definitions and values. So one of the things we're seeing a lot in our world right now is how the left politically and the right politically can't seem to communicate with each other. And that's because we're holding very, very different definitions about all sorts of things in life. How we view the idea of freedom, for example, or liberty, democracy, fascism. All of these things are truly defined differently for these two groups of people. And we see that with the gender divide as well. Or if you're dealing with people with different religions, or people with different gender beliefs and biases, people who are old versus people who are young. So semantic noise really also deals with the fact that I may hold a different definition than you, and you and I, we haven't taken the time to figure out the definition of the word that we're talking about in order to be able to be on the same footing so we can make transactional meaning making using compassion. And indeed, finding out that we hold different definitions and then taking the time to figure out how we will both define a concept or idea for any moment of communication, that is compassion. And that's compassion because we actually care about what the other person has to say. Now, it's a little bit more difficult with our furry friends, but if we listen to our furry friends' nonverbal communication, we can often figure out what it is that they need in order to communicate better with them. And I want to end this idea about semantic noise on communication with self. We often hold a lot of ideas in our head about the way we should be, the way society wants us to be, the way our parents want us to be, or our friends. We hold a lot of assumptions. And we hold a lot of misperceptions about perfection, which, by the way, does not exist. So when we speak to ourselves, you're ugly, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, why are you always making things difficult? Why don't people ever listen to you? We are misdefining concepts and ideas that we are placing on ourselves. And this is a huge problem, and it is semantic noise with ourselves. If I tell myself I am ugly all the time, what do I mean by ugly? Am I judging other people? Am I defining what ugly is with other people the same way I'm defining it with myself? Probably not. I'm probably not actually holding the same definition for other people that I'm holding for myself. I'm probably holding a more stringent definition for myself. So when you think about semantic noise, I want you to think about it broadly, and the same way with physical noise, because both of these things impact our lives daily and pretty much 24/7. They never leave. All noise never leaves. So my challenge to you is to have a journal and to figure out how much noise is in your life. Just take a few minutes, do a mindfulness exercise, and think to yourself, can I define any physical noise in my environment? What is it, and why is it a problem? Then do the same thing for semantic noise. How am I talking to myself? How am I talking to others? How am I viewing the world through my particular lens, and does that viewpoint match other people's viewpoint? Do I need to find a good definition in which we can share? Keep this kind of thing in your journals, because the more you can identify different forms of noise in your life and see how they are happening simultaneously, the more likely you'll be able to make choices about how you communicate going forward. And the next video, we're going to look at psychological noise, noise in the brain, and physiological noise, noise in the body, because these two forms of noises are intimately connected.